It's so great with everyone here who shares my passion for the environment. Last year, I led my own project with the Generation Green. It's called Food in Harmony, where I was able to learn a lot with the challenges I overcame and the areas I could have done better. And today, I will be sharing with you all my experience and the tips and tricks I find helpful. So, let's talk about project development and how to make your project as impactful as possible. In this session, I will walk you through how to plan your project, build support, overcome setbacks, and end with a bang. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your initiative to the next level, I hope you benefit from practical strategies and lessons I will be sharing with you today. First of all, let's see some of our ideas as a group. Does anyone want to answer what inspired you to get involved and lead your projects? You can raise your hand or you can just type it in chat. Okay, so maybe we don't want to share right now, but make sure you have, this motivation to keep in mind when you're moving forward to your project because it's the motivation that drives us forward, right? Or does anyone want to share, like, what are some of our ideas already for our project? Well, there really isn't like a standard for the ideas we have, but just like in general, how do we get involved with our school or our community? Like, how do we, because we have our project idea that we want to do to make an impact. It's like, what are some of ideas to bring it out to the world? And we might make a garden on our whole school harvest. Okay, that's a great idea. And I think, yeah, making a garden is surely really impactful. And I'm sure it contributes to your overall project idea in general. So, yeah, that's really cool. Be prepared, like throughout this webinar to open up your mic and share with your group your ideas or just type in the chat because I want to make this webinar as interactive as possible so that we can all get inspired by other project leaders, right? Oh yeah, I see an answer that what inspired my group was the amount of car pedestrian accidents that happen. That's a very good motivational statement. Definitely, like that's something you can share with your audience as well because it's a very important issue that you're trying to tackle here. A walk and wheel reward system. I'm not sure what that means. Do you want to explain a little bit further? Okay, that's a great idea. I love how you're using the idea of incentive because like it's great that people are doing sustainability um because they want to create change, but also having that incentive is really what drives people to create change, right? You could organize fundraisers for people to attend too, so that they could get ideas of what message we're trying to convey. Okay, that's great. And you also get funding, I'm sure. Okay, these are great ideas. I can see that you guys really thought about your project already. And well, let's go to the next step where we learn how to make our ideas into action. So, some of us already covered this already, but in the first step of the planning stage is to have a clear goal and problem statement. Keeping it simple and manageable, ask yourself, what specific issue am I trying to convey? For example, instead of I want to make sure people reduce energy waste, we say a lot of youth aren't aware of the energy consumption in their homes, so we want to give people the opportunity to measure and record this data with something like a self-audit. A clear focus will make it easier to take action and measure success. So, like in Ella's case, she wants to track the amount of students who take the bus, bike, or walk. And that's a problem state. That's a clear goal that she is going forward. And the problem statement would be like people are not using the most sustainable ways of transportation, right? That's great. It's also important that we have a timeline with small goals along the way. So we can have one general goal, and then it's up to you to determine, to you and your team, to determine what your timeline is going to be. That's broken down to like small, manageable steps to take to move towards that end goal. But first, let's talk about the two types of project management. First, we have an adaptive project framework where through this planning we focus on flexibility. You make steady progress and regularly reassesses your goal. So through this journey, you will gradually improve your decision and processes, and you will improve it based on the outcome of your decisions made in the earlier stage of the project. On the other hand, we have the predictive project framework, which involves detailed planning, giving a clear guide and an ordered list of tasks and when they need to be done. So in this project management, we have a sequence of steps, one following another, and change is not a part of our plan because we already made in-depth planning to avoid risks and keep our project on the right track. Does anyone want to share which approach you and your team are pursuing or considering at this stage? Or which project management you find easier? Right. So which project management framework are you using in your planning stage? First, we have adaptive, which is focusing on flexibility, and then we have predictive, where we plan out all our tasks that we need to do in the first planning stage, and we kind of avoid change and avoid risks along the way. That's cool. And yeah, you guys can also answer the poll that we just posted. So I see we have currently more people using the adaptive project management framework. And I agree, it's easier to just get ahead, to just go right into it rather than like planning the whole process. And in a way, I recommend the adaptive framework because we're just collecting experience, right? We're not trying to do everything perfect the first time, and we have to consider that when we're planning our projects. However, in an ideal project, a hybrid of both approaches meaning a mix of both planning, control, and ongoing adjustments will help you ultimately succeed in your project. With that said, no matter which type of project you are leading, you will need a planning document to record your goals and achievements. So, a short-term goal for our project would be like 1 to 2 weeks. These are achievable wins that keep our motivation high and keep us moving forward. For example, getting one classroom to participate in your energy saving challenge. And then we have long-term goals, which builds towards a bigger change. So 5 to 6 weeks. And this is a milestone in our journey, each one getting closer and closer to our end goal. For example, cutting down the energy consumption of your school by 3%. Like maybe your end goal is cutting it down by 5% or 8%. But you want to break that down into long-term goals and break that even further into like specific steps you can take towards reaching that goal. So now it's your turn. What's a long-term goal you can think of for the next month for your project? And what's the first short-term goal that you will be working towards it? Okay, so we don't have to share right now, but we can share like at the end if, oh, cool. So Elizabeth said our short-term goal would be to launch and our to launch a project, I would assume, and our long-term goal would be to reduce food waste by 2 to 3%. So that's actually a great framework. I would say, like, of course, when you're at the planning stage, your short-term goal would be to finally launch a project and to make sure people are aware of it for the first time. And then, yes, the long-term goal will be ultimately what you want to achieve in the end. And then, since our idea revolves around reducing traffic, our short-term goal would be wanting a few individuals to start using our solution, which would overall reduces cars going in and out of the parking lot in the long term. That's a great goal as well. I would say like wanting a few individuals to start using our solution. Like how much is a few individuals? Like 5 to 6 people and going like how much do you want to reduce the car traffic in the long term? Make sure when you are actually listing down your goal in your document, making it as specific as possible. That's also a great long-term goal, Palak. I think Yeah, I'm glad you're starting to think of school participation, which is outreach is definitely a big part that we want to focus on if we want to make a long-term impact. Yeah, okay. I'm glad that you added that you have a target audience, which is people who typically drive to school alone. And starting out with one classroom at a time will definitely be a great short-term goal. So let's move on to our implementing stage. One of the biggest mistakes people like me make when starting an environmental project is trying to do too much too soon, and then procrastinate too much when the motivation runs out. I know everyone's been there, but make sure you know big impacts come from small and intentional steps. Oh yeah, okay. Um, Hema also shared that their group is comparing LED to gas bulbs and collecting data. Okay, that's a great project idea. Comparing LED to gas bulb, making sure people are aware of the impacts of it, and collecting data. Oh, first-hand data on the emission. That's cool. That's a great project idea. So, getting back to the implementing stage, before the full rollout of our implementation, it's good to make sure that our idea is feasible. And a great way to do this is starting with a trial and a pilot. So what is a trial and a pilot? A trial is a test run of our ideas to see its performance and effectiveness and determine if this project is good to proceed. A trial answers the question, does it work? Does anyone want to share a trial test you can plan for your project or that you have already done? While you guys are typing that, um, in the case of tracking the emission that's released by LED bulb and gas bulb, I would say a trial run would be like doing research on how others have conducted this research and just trying it out yourself before like going out and sharing your data with everyone, making sure that you are able to conduct this experiment with like a bulb in your house, something that you can control first. And also, let's say you are working on an energy self-audit, which is what my group is working on. The trial would be just having your group doing it first and making sure it is at least possible for our peers to do. Making sure that we are able to provide all the resources we need for others to carry out a self-audit. I see that some people are probably still typing in the chat, but let's talk about the other way that we can test out our project feasibility. So a trial is not required when you are sure of your project idea, like maybe it's a local or a school initiative with not much risk factors involved. But I would highly recommend starting with a pilot version of your project. So a pilot is more about a small scale implementation, and we are trying to refine our plan before we scale up. And we are aiming to provide to identify potential issues and improve our process. So we are not trying to aim to change the whole school infrastructure overnight, but a pilot would be to begin with one classroom, one hallway, and like one test run. We can find with the pilot, how can we make this work best? Does anyone want to share your pilot test? Well, let's see. Our pilot can be asking a few of our friends to do our energy self-audit, seeing how much interest we can get from the people who are like close to us. And then we can see how we can refine our process to make it more achievable and accessible. So make sure that you learn, refine, and build momentum to expand the impact of your project with these techniques like a trial and a pilot. Let's look at our next step. Oh, none of us can make an impact on our own, right? We need support from our community, and our schools are the best way to start. Since this is a sustainability project, I would say the environmental councils in your school would be the place to start. But don't let your collaboration stop there. Make sure you reach out to all the other clubs that have a similar focus to your specific project. So let's say you are developing a software that track energy efficiency. Make sure to connect with your school's technology clubs. It might seem intimidating at first, but just a quick email to the club leaders can be a way to gain the support that makes your project that much easier. What's the next way to leverage your impact? Getting the general student body on board. Sometimes just a poster around your school don't get enough interest, and this is where the importance of targeted outreach comes in. If you have good connections with the staff in your school, ask them to tell their students about your project, especially teachers in the science department. More often than not, they are equally as passionate about energy efficiency and will be more than happy to help out. And in my school, for example, our supervisor for the environmental council is like the nicest teacher. I know we will be able I know that she will be able to provide us with more than just connections, but also mentorship and guidance. So make sure you reach out to those teachers who can help you. If you also know someone who is a student leader, who have led projects in the past, tell them about your project and ask if they can share the experience. Well, even with all this, word of mouth is likely the most powerful tool to gain support. So ask your friends to ask their friends to ask their friends to learn about your project. Also, if you have school events, ask to bring your project there and look out for any opportunity to grow your support base. Does anyone have any ideas to share about connecting with your school or where you plan to start from the option I just talked about? Okay, let's move on for now and talk about when we have all the support we need and the resources we can find. Oh, I see. So, Hima just shared that for her project, we're asking staff members about what bulb do all the schools use, which actually connects to the resource part we're talking about right now, is utilizing our staff resources for information. And this is a good part of our project because when we want to obtain data that are relevant to like our schools, it's cool to have that connection with the staff. And I think it's a great idea. So the resource for our project. Thanks, Taeyang, for sharing. Yes, that's also a great way to start and gaining our support base. So the resource part of our project will vary greatly from your individual ideas. But here are some tips and tricks I have learned from experience. First up, we have social media platforms. Always have an Instagram account in place where you can share your impact to actively engage with the audience. I would say make sure you tag the Generation Green account when you post about your milestones. Also, a website is a great way to make your project look real and professional. And your website have a simple description of your objective and updates of where you are in the timeline along with the team bio and contact information so that the viewers can know how to get involved. Meanwhile, having a mailing list with the people who are interested in your school to follow up with your projects directly. You can send them weekly newsletters. You can ask them to fill in a Google form with their email so you can reach out to them directly. Even create a project email if you find it necessary to show that much professionalism. Now here is one tip that I have for you. If your audience is youth, I'd advise against creating YouTube videos. Just because when you have a startup project, it is much easier to gain attention on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. And if you're going to create like full-length YouTube videos, be aware that you're not spending too much efforts creating that videos if it's not a priority. Because after all, social media is only a part of our way to gain engagement. And in general, make sure you are prioritizing the right platforms where you are able to target your audience. So by raise of hands, how many of you have created some sort of social media account already? And of course, share in the chat if you use a platform that I didn't cover in this list. Did anyone? Okay, that's great. We have a couple of people who already have social media platforms because it's such like in our society, in the modern age, it is so easy to get our ideas out there with like minimum efforts through social media. Okay, now let's talk about funding. For sure, focus first on the actions that will require no cost. But if you do want to, say, leverage your impact by incentivizing purchasing green energy saving technology and equipment, or printing marketing materials like stickers, anything that will require a budget, unfortunately, we don't offer any in our Generation Green project. But what you can do is, for one, partnering with local businesses, your local city programs. There's always opportunities out there that offers grant, so make sure you do your research and ask your school staff and principal if they have opportunities for you. If you're lucky, your school might allocate a part of your school budget to support your initiative. If you don't ask, you'll never know, right? Sometimes fundraisers are also necessary, so don't worry if you can't obtain any sponsorship. How many of you think it's necessary for your project to have a budget? By a raise of hands. No one? Well, okay, yeah. Like, let's make sure that you have a fundraiser set up in your school, which I think you talked about earlier, which is great. Now let's move on to, oh, that's the wrong direction. Data and surveys. So data really matters when it comes to measuring your impact and knowing where you are. We really need data for our report as well, which we will be discussing in our webinar on Thursday. But make sure each of your group members keep track of your individual data in a Google Sheet, leading by example, right? If your group member don't do it, how do you expect, the community members, the people you're trying to reach out to record the data? Okay, that is great to hear you have that much budget. And I'm sure that really helps with your school garden. So with our data and survey, using Google Form, social media posts, and face-to-face interactions are a good idea. Just make sure you have a place where you can collect data and share that data with the people you are engaging with. When conducting your surveys, make sure you ask simple and clear questions. And at the end of your project, look back at all the data you collected and ask yourself, what did I do great? And what can I do better next time? Make sure you also share your conclusion statement with all your supporters you collected along the way. I'm sure they would want to know their impact in the community as well. And for our last portion, which is overcoming obstacles, let me share with you a bit of my experience when I was leading my project last year. I did this thing where I knocked on people's doors in hopes of conducting a 5-minute survey with people at their doorstep. And as you can imagine, people might not prefer this random ninth grader showing up and inquiring them about their waste habits. For the first 3 doors I knocked at, I received no response. In fact, I found no luck in about half of the neighbors' houses I arrived at. But guess what I did in response? Yes, I took note of the houses I didn't get and I moved on. I revisited them later. Some of them opened their doors the second time, some of them didn't. But you know what I learned is that in any initiative, it is so important to learn how to pivot, adapt, and learn from rejections. So if you get rejections anywhere in the process of your project, don't let a few no's stop you. Of course, if you get mostly no's, maybe it's time to reconsider your options. But every setback is a lesson, so don't let it discourage you. There will be a period of time where you receive 0 responses or low responses from anyone you reached out to. But say you are sending out emails. If you don't receive a reply within a week, follow up with another email. Still no response within a few days, follow up with your follow-up email. I'm not kidding. If you don't have to take no for an answer, take it as a not yet. But yes, there will be teachers and potential collaborators who tells you directly, no, I'm not interested. When this happens, you have to be proactive. If your principal can't provide you with resources like funding, ask them why, so that you can improve your project ideas, so you can ask other potential resource providers and also ask them for feedback on the other aspects of your project in general. If they say no to one suggestion, like what else can you obtain from them? You will have no obstacle when you find a way to tap into every circumstance and turn any response to an opportunity. However, what if your challenge is not rejection from one person? What if your challenge is a lack of engagement, which is a very common form of challenge when we're trying to do community projects? Keep in mind that people are resistant to some extent toward changing habits, so it will take time for your initiative to get out there. For example, I was able to talk to only a third of the people I was planning for because of the lack of engagement in the community. But some people literally invited me into their houses and we had a 40-minute conversation all the way from food waste, which was what I was starting at, to all the possible improvements of Canadian waste diversion system. And I consider that as impactful. And success comes in a lot of different ways, even if you get a lack of engagement, right? As I said, for an adaptive project framework, your plan can change, and you can still make the same amount of impact you set out to make, or even more. So, another thing you can do is to give your participants some sort of incentive, like volunteer hours, small prizes, words of affirmation throughout the process, and virtual certificate is my favorite. Be patient with the people you're trying to engage with, and remember to keep your objectives reasonable and to reward yourself for every progress, because every small goals tackled is a win. So, in summary, these are the tips and tricks I offer that you will be benefiting from to succeed in your project. Be clear on how your projects will work before you carry it out. Make sure you plan accordingly to your end goal and communicate with your team members. Take small actions. Don't bite off more than you can chew, and don't get discouraged by setbacks. Track your progress, reflect and adjust based on your progress. Be persistent because all great projects will face challenges, and also celebrate small wins and milestones. So now I will be opening up the floor for questions. Does anyone have any further comments you want to share? That's really good, Ella. Yeah, make sure you have at least an Instagram page. I think that's where the most people get the most amount of engagement from the audience.
Yeah, I just wanted to add if anyone did create an Instagram page for their project so far, you can send it over your Instagram handle to the volunteer at email, and then we can always tag you at the Generation Green Instagram account or even reshare your post.
Yeah, make sure to tag us when you're posting your impact so we can help you leverage your platform. Is there no further questions?
Well, if there are no further questions, I think we can thank Dawn for the great informative webinar. I think it was like really helpful to learn what other groups are also doing. So hopefully this sort of helps everyone proceed with their projects.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to leave you off with an idea. Every big movement started with a small step. So remember, your ideas have the power to create real change. So start small and let's end big. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. And of course, reach out if you come up with any further questions or need support on your project. I will be always happy to help and good luck on your projects.